Hello everybody, welcome back, or if you're a new time visitor, hello. I'm going to just wait a bit for everybody to come in as I did yesterday. Just make sure that you have got your page up to makecode.microbit.org, and that page is in the link. Okay, I haven't waited that long, but it all seems to be working okay. So today we're going to have a look at the very basics of gaming. A lot of games require a bit of maths, but don't worry, the maths we're going to use today isn't too hard at all. Just a teeny bit of probability, but not even really that. So what we're going to have a look at is the function that most games rely on is probability, the chances of something happening. So we're going to take you through the very basics on how we'll display that today, taking us through to, I won't say it's a game as such, but it's the startings of a game, and hopefully by the end of this week we might go further down this road, enabling us to produce much more impressive kind of games using probability. So click on New Project. Again, just go to makecode.microbit.org. The link has that if you're finding it a struggle to do. If you were here yesterday using the same computer, you may well have some other items that you used yesterday, but don't worry if you don't, we're going to start from scratch. You don't need to have watched yesterday's to complete this today. We're going to go straight into another area of the microbit, so just click that to go now. So click the New Project, and here we are. Now, for those of you new, this is very drag and droppy, like Scratch if you've ever used it. So we're not really using any code yet. We might get to that at the end of the 2 weeks, but today we're just using drag and drop logic. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just show some very basic items. So as it's quite aptly named, I'm going to go to basic, and I'm going to grab show number, and I'm going to drag that into forever. And the emulator, this thing that shows you what a real microbit would do if you had one, just shows 0, because that makes sense. We've told the microbit here that forever we must show the value 0. If we were to change that number and just tap into there and press 1, it would show me 1 forever. Now that's obviously rubbish and won't really help us for any kind of game. So what we need to do is work out how we can add some element of chance into the game. And thankfully for us, there is a section here that deals with the maths for us. So if you click in this purpley grey area here, highlighted by the grey, you can see there are lots of maths things. We don't have to worry about anything here, because we're just going to go straight to the pick random kind of bullet there, and we're going to drag that into the screen, and this will do all the maths for us. So you're going to drag that into the screen. I'm just going to leave it there. And for those of you that weren't with us yesterday, it's hashed out at the moment just because it's not part of any block. It's not having an effect on anything. Now I'm going to drag that pill shape, and the shapes are well designed, because you can see here we've kind of got that shape but much smaller here where the number 1 is, because I can drag that in, and you'll notice when you drag it correctly it will kind of highlight in yellow all the way around it, meaning it's going to go into that block. And now you can see here that forever is just choosing random numbers between 0 and 10, and it's just doing that over and over again with no purpose whatsoever, but it's just showing us that forever we can do that. Now it's very rare, or it's not very often, we're going to want that random number to keep appearing like that with no point. So we're going to put an action in, an input that brings up this random number. Now also it's worth us pointing out that in computing we often start with the value 0. 0 is our first number, where we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Computers like to start with the number 0. That can be confusing and add an element of difficulty that we don't need, because right now, although it says pick a random number between 0 and 1, 0 counts as a number. So we've actually got 11 values here, 0 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's quite often that you probably meant to choose 1 to 10 rather than 0 to 10, but it's worth pointing that out because as you get on with computing, understanding that 0 is our first number is very important, but not needed for today's lesson. So here, what I'm going to do now is, I don't want that to happen forever. I'm going to go to input, and on input here I'm going to do on shake because that's more interesting. You can just do a button press if you prefer. You don't have to do everything exactly the same as I do it here, so you might want to press a button rather than do shake, but I think shake's more interesting. And I drag shake in, and I don't want it to go forever now. I'm going to drag that block out and simply stick it into there. So now what will happen is the microbit's saying nothing at the moment, but if I was to shake it quite hard, and you can try and do that with the mouse or the trackpad, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, there you go if you do it hard enough, or just press the shake button. And every time I press the shake button, it's coming up with a new random number between 1 and 10. And if it does the 10 like it did there, it's going to scroll by because there's 2 values. Now, we often deal with dice, so I'm going to choose 1 to 6 now instead, and if I press shake, I've now got values here for a dice. So, you know, if you can't find a dice to hand, you can make one online. How easy is that, using the microbit? And of course, if you're into games that require more than 6-sided dice, 20-sided dice or things like that, you can actually just change those and work out the numbers and shake them, and you'll have your bigger values. And if the value goes over 10, like that one is 12, it will just scroll through the value. Now, that's all very well and good, but choosing a number is only half the issue. We need to make decisions. So what I'm going to do, just so I'm not repeating myself over and over again, I'm going to choose a 3-sided dice now. Not that you can get them, but just for the purpose of this game, this is why sometimes the virtual world can be more interesting than the real world, because you can do things that you can't do in real life. So here we've got a 3-sided dice, just so I don't have to repeat myself over and over. And now we're going to make some decisions. I'm going to drag out the show number tab now, because I'm not going to do this. What I want to do is I want to show some visuals on here, some graphics on the microbit rather than just saying the number. Or as we go on with gaming through the week, you're going to want to run an action off the probability. So to do this, we need to have a value that constantly changes and that we can keep track of, and that's known as a variable. And we have a whole section for variables here, and it's just a way of tracking numbers that change over time every time we want to do something. So if I click variable, there's none in here because I haven't made a decision on my variable yet. And so we just click make a variable. And if we make one, I'm just going to call it roll. Doesn't matter if you use capitals, doesn't matter if you write a different word in there, or just even, as sometimes quite happens in coding, just a letter. Now, those of you that have always said, well, you know, don't like maths, or what's the point in maths? Well, we in maths would use X or Y. So it's just representing a number that changes all the time. And now you're seeing that algebra is actually quite useful for gaming. Without mathematics, you wouldn't have your games, and that would be devastating. So learn to love your maths, even if it's just because you like to play games. So I've made this variable called roll, and I'm going to press OK. When I do that, it's given me some options now. And the one I'm interested in is this one, set roll to 0. So I'm going to drag that in. There we go. And it's going to say set roll to 0. Now, it's not going to display anything. I'm pressing shake, nothing's happening, because all I've done is told the computer to set the value roll to 0. Now, this is where I'm going to borrow this random number bit out of here. I've just dragged it out of that block, and I'm going to stick it into here. I could have done a new one. I could have gone to math. I could have dragged another pick random out and dragged it in here, but I already had it, so I just borrowed it. And so now it's going to set the roll to pick a random number between 1 and 3 on my 3-sided dice. Press shake again, nothing's happening because I need to show the number. So I can drag that into here, and hopefully somebody's going to predict what's going to happen when I press my shake. It's going to press 1, shake again, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, forever. And that's because I just said show the number 1. What I wanted to do was show this value, whatever it was, the roll number. So I need to go back to my variable here and drag in the roll. Because I don't want to show the number 1, I want to show the value roll. And if I press shake now, I'm getting all my numbers, there we go, as I click them, different values for between 1 and 3. Now that may seem like I did it much easier before, I just had the show number. But now we have a variable called roll, we can do some things that are more interesting than just showing numbers. We can make the microbit make a decision. So I'm going to drag this show out because I'm not really bothered about showing the number now. I'd like to show a graphic. Now to do that, the computer needs to make decisions. And this is, and again, one of the most important parts of coding and computing is your logic. You don't necessarily have to be amazing at maths, you have to be good at logic for coding. And they are subtly different. So if you click logic, we have some things that look quite scary, but I'll talk you through them, and they're not really. And while there is a difference between if and if else here, for the purpose of the microbit, you only really need to drag the if statement out because you can add everything afterwards. So we go to logic and we drag in an if. Now let's go through our commands. On shake, it sets roll to a number between 1 and 3. Well, let's see. If, and then let's do a statement here. Now again, the shape of this makes the decision. So I'm going to go back to logic where I have that same shape. So it's very useful. They've thought very carefully about the shapes so that things fit in the right place. And again, there's different options here, but we can just take the top one because we can change them. And we're going to make a comparison. I'm going to drag that in and it goes yellow. If it doesn't, if you click it out here and it goes hashed, you need to make sure that the yellow highlighted when you drag it in. And here I'm going to go back to my variable because at the moment it says if 0 equals 0. Well, that just doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to go to variable and I'm going to grab my roll again. And it says if, and drag it in, watch the yellow because look there, it's going to look, see, look, it jumped it out there if I didn't do that carefully. So you need to make sure that you get it into the right shape there. And that's what we're after. If roll, remember that's any number now, equals, well, 0. None of the numbers I've chosen are 0. I've got 1, 2 or 3. So I need to say if roll equals 1, then I do something. And this is up to you what you do. You can play a sound, you can draw a graphic. I'm going to go to my basic and I'm going to grab the LEDs because I'm going to draw something custom and I'm going to drag that into the right place. Make sure you're careful. Doesn't matter if you accidentally do something like that. It takes a little bit of moving around, but you can get things back to where they were. Okay, and here now we've got that idea. So again, don't be too worried if things go wrong. You can always use undo buttons that you've got here. So if you click into here and it's gone wrong, press the undo and just don't panic, because as these programs get quite big, you will drag things into the wrong place. You can use the undo or just rearrange back to where you were. And on a dice, that's what usually happens with the roll of 1, just a little dot. So we've kind of said if roll equals 1, then draw the dot. So if I press the plus now, I get some more options, another else. If it's not 1, well, I've actually got more than one option here. If it's not 1, it's not, you know, just something else, it's 2 or 3. So I can press this plus again to get a third option. So I've got 3 gaps in here. And what this one says here, I can can duplicate. Notice where I'm right clicking or two finger clicking on the whole pill that looks like a little bit more triangular there, and then I can duplicate that whole bit out, which is really useful. Or I could go in and grab a new one, up to you, whichever you find easiest. And if you're finding right clicking and two finger clicking difficult, you can just go in and grab another one, and you drag in the same again, except this time I don't want to know what happens when it equals 1, I want to know what happens when it equals 2. And I can duplicate this LED again, or I can grab another one, up to you. You'll get faster and better at using this program. And the 2 I'm just going to have as 2 dots. Now if it's not a 1 and it's not a 2, often what's left is just the 3 that's left. So you don't necessarily have to do a bigger block here for that. There's two schools of thought on this. Some people like to do an error here. So they like to actually say, do you know what? It makes more sense to me. I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to drag in that same block, and I'm going to say if it equals 3, and I'm going to duplicate or drag in from here, and I'm going to do my dots there. So I've got 1, 2 and 3 now, and this is quite right. It says pick a number between 1, 2 or 3, so I shouldn't get any other values in this. I could have just dragged this into the bottom, but some people like me like to have just a value in here that says, you know, if something weird has happened, it's like a debugging. It's just a reminder saying, if one of these things doesn't happen, I have done something wrong in the code. So I've just put a little reminder in here, an X. If I see an X pop up, I've done something wrong in the code, because it shouldn't, because it's saying 1, 2 or 3. So you don't have to have that bit at the end. You could have just had the only option left, but I like to have something to show me that something's gone wrong with the code. So here, let's press the shake, and I've got 1. Press shake again, and I've got 3. Press shake again, I'm back to 1, because it's random, it doesn't go through all of them, and a 3 again, and a 1 again, and a 1 again. Is 2 ever going to come up? There it is. So, you know, it's probability. 2 doesn't have to come up all the time. It's a 3-sided dice. So if I click loads of times, I'll see it's a fair share of 1s and 2s and 3s when I'm clicking that. So there we go. It's a dice that's worked out through probability. Now, sometimes when I shake, I might get the same number. So I'm clicking once there, click, 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 and I'm getting different numbers, but every now and again, like I just did there, I clicked and I must have had a 2 and then a 2. Now you wouldn't know that, and you might think that you've not clicked it, and you actually just rolled the same number again. And in some games it's important if you roll like maybe a 6 and a 6 together, so you maybe want a little graphic to remind you that you're rolling a dice. So I'm going to go back to my show icons here, and I'm going to, on shake, before anything happens, I'm going to maybe do a couple of animations, which you can do anything you like, but I'm going to use something like this, a 1, then I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to show the other kind of simple version of that one, which looks like this, and then I'm going to duplicate again. So I just did 3 little icons to suggest that the dice is rolling. There they are. And now when I press shake, it does kind of like the animation. There you go. That's your answer. Duh, 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 and then there. So I got 1, 1, 1 again, making me think that something's wrong. There's the 3. So again, 3-sided dice, you might get the same number quite a few times in a row. It's probability. And there we go. So I've added animation into what I'm doing to make it more interesting. On shake, I could change that from shake to tilting screen down. You know, I wouldn't want to throw my microbit, they're fairly durable, but you could drop it and it would just, the impact would be registered. So there's different things that you can do to activate, as well as even just using the buttons themselves to press that. So now you've got an idea of how we can use probability or numbers to make certain decisions. We could try another one. So what I'm going to do is, you know, we started to get to places now that I actually might want to keep this code so I can remember it. There's quite a lot going on here. If ever you need to do a dice, if I want to do a 6-sided dice, just dip in 6 here, and then I would just do another 3, 4, 5 and 6. So I'd have those there and I could quickly do it. You don't have to do this for me. I'll just show you how quickly you can use the duplicate to just drag in your values. I can change the numbers in a second, and there we go. I've got my 4, got my 5, got my 6, and then again you've got your actual graphics to put into there for 4 and for 5 and for 6. So you could end up doing whatever you want. The more complicated, the more clicks, obviously. And again, I've just got that last one in to tell me if something's gone wrong. And then I've got a much more graphical die that we're all kind of used to seeing. Probably should have put those on the outside, but hey, my dice is different. And then each time you've got to roll 3, 6 there. It does look weird. I'd stick it out there. Doesn't take long. Visuals are important sometimes, although again I think it's just the nature of the way that looks. It's off to the side, it might look a bit weird, but there we go. Now we could end up having a dice, then another dice. So maybe you've got something you would have here where you might add in dice 1, so you might end up with a D, a D1, and maybe that's a case of showing you D1, which would represent dice 1, so roll D1 and then a number, and then it might wait for 10 seconds or 5 seconds at the end and then do another roll with D2. Maybe it's up to you. If you do want to have 2 dice rolls as we get more complicated, you would duplicate and you would create another variable, and you would have to call that roll 2. And that way you would separate out the fact that you would have, and here I would say set roll 2 to that number. So now I would have 2 separate values, and you would have to extend that out. Now I'm not going to go down that road today, but some of you that have got this may decide, actually, do you know what, I'm going to go down and make quite a complicated idea, but we're going to stop there for now. I'm going to show you one last thing for today, and that's something that I used to have when I was a kid. Maybe some of you have them now, and it's a magic 8-ball. A magic 8-ball was something you used to hold in your hand, and you used to shake it, and it would come up with different items to say as just like a lucky or a future predicting globe, the magic 8-ball. People used to make their decisions based off a magic 8-ball because it would have yes, no, not sure, roll again. There were lots of different things, and you can make your own version of a magic 8-ball using the microbit. Now, like I said, I've spent a bit of time here, so I am actually going to call this dice, and I'm going to save it so that actually it will save to your computer should you want to use it again. You can keep it in a folder somewhere to say what you've been doing, and it will download into your download area. If things don't work, because at the moment that's actually quite useful to see for me, if things don't work, if this is stalling here, you can actually just click in your editor anywhere in the browser at the top here, press enter, and it will reload your page eventually. It may say that something went wrong, or because I've got lots and lots of programs open to make this happen. There you go. If that ever happens, do not panic. You can exit the page, and it's quite good for me to see here, and when you press enter it will come back in your same browser, and this makes it very important that we talk about saving your work in the editors, because if you do ever lose your work or something goes wrong, this is how you would get it back. So you can always reload your pages and see what happens when you go through. Now, what we're going to have a look at now, like I said, is the magic 8-ball when we go through this. And what we're going to have a look at as I drag this through here is we're going to have a look at text words, but still using the same probability. So you can click a new project, and you can click a new project by going home and clicking a new one, or deleting what you've got. So by all means have a go with that now. And we're going to come up with some new variables for that. Again, like I said, you can close down wherever you're at and see what happens. And here I'm going to say, right, I'm going to have a new variable because we know it's going to happen, and the new variable is going to be called the future. Okay. Now I'm going to just drag that in as a variable, and again, because it was a magic 8 ball, the input I like is shake, so I'm going to use that. And then I'm going to have on shake set future to, and I'm only going to have a few choices here now, so I'm going to go to math, and then I'm going to go to pick random, and you can have as many choices as you want here. I'm just going to end up with 3 choices. Remember, 3 choices: 0, 1 and 2. So we've got 3 numbers here. Again, if you don't like that, that's just a coding thing that I've had for years. You can just go to 1 to 3 if it makes your life easier. I'm not really bothered, but to be honest, I am going to start using the proper terms and the proper kind of way of working, and I'm going to start with the number 0. So here we go to logic again. If we remember, it's the same as the dice. We're finding out that to do these things is very, very similar each time. And we go to the if, just drag the top one out, and again we go to logic again, and we grab one of those kind of triangular looking objects there. Hexagon, I should really say, I suppose. It's got 6 sides, a regular hexagon. The maths teacher in me won't let that go. So we go back to variable. If the future equals 0, then, and I'm going to go to basic, show a string. And I'm going to use the basics that we used to do. Yes. Okay, so we used to ask the magic 8 ball a question. Should I have bacon roll this morning? Shake it. Yes would be the answer. That would be an excellent answer. So here we can add else again, and we've got more than one choice, so I'm going to click it twice there, so I've got 3 options so far, and I'm going to duplicate what I've already done to save me some work, and I'm going to drag, oh, see, there you go, drag it. Don't panic. You know, if you were to drag out there, we can press the undo all times, drag the right bit at the right place, and now we're looking what happens if future equals 1. And we can right click and duplicate, or drag another text box in from basic or string, and we have the other option, which is no. And then we can now have duplicate for the last option. We could have maybe, or roll again, because it was yes or no, and then we can have roll again until we get the decision that we want. And if we did that, let's have a shake. Roll again. I'm going to wait. I know what it is, so I'm just going to press it. Oh, it's going to have to do the whole. I always forget it has to do the whole string. Nope, straight off the bat. Now here you might think, do you know what? It's taken ages to scroll. Maybe I just want to replace that particular string with a tick. So you can drag out into the trash can, which is here. And you can duplicate, which is 2-finger or right click, and do an X. So this time that'll save me a bit of reading. We're making our magic cable better, but I quite like, you know, the kind of, I'm quite old, and the text going across reminds me of the magic 8 ball's decision making. So you know, you might have the crosses and the ticks, but I quite like to have some text. There you go, cross, tick. If you want to have more options, you know, you can go up to maybe 6 options here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options. Just keep pressing the plus button until you get there. And so I've got my 6 options now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But remember, I quite liked to have kind of like just a double check, a bit of code that shows me if it's not one of those options, because sometimes you think you've done everything and then the computer game won't work. And I'm saying if it's not 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, then something else went wrong because I've only given it those options. And I like to have that last bit as just a little check for me that all the options are taken care of. Because, and I'll show you why that's important, I've just deleted a bit of text there. If I duplicate these, I will show you a problem, which is why I quite like to have that last bit of code. And it's important we learn how to debug or check our code for errors. So I've got 0, 1, 2. Oh, there you go, just dragged it out there. Put it back in. 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to add one actually. I am going to put it back in. And I am going to say the number 5. Except what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an error that's quite often I duplicate a lot. So I'm going to leave it like that. Hopefully someone's seen the error already. Okay, but what I'm showing you now is if I did all these options and I did roll again, the other kind of options that I used to have were maybe sometimes you'd have something like the chances are good. You can come up with your own stuff again. Doesn't look likely. So we've got those options, but what we've got here is we've got the options here. If we didn't have this one here actually, and or something went wrong, and I'd forgotten to do the 5th one, then we would have an error that it would come up with this cross if the number 5 would roll, and that would remind me that I'd missed something out. So having that in there, don't worry if this is going over your head, I'm ending on this one, but adding in this kind of chance here to show you that something doesn't happen as you expect it to allows you to go back through your code and check. So if I had forgotten that bit, you'd then be able to put it back in because I checked. And it also helps you to identify code like I'd forgotten to change the 4 to 5 when I was duplicating. When we duplicate, we often do make those errors a lot of the time. So now I have my magic 8 ball. We're going to end pretty much here today, but I've got just a little competition to talk to you about. And you've got what's going on here. Now, competition time. I've decided that at the end of this week, I'm going to give away a microbit at the very least. I'm probably going to ask someone if they want to help me out, sponsor me for maybe a bit more. So what I'm going to say to you is, whatever your code is here today that you've worked on and during the week, if you click the share button on your microbit, it will say, do you want to share your project? You'll give it a name, and I'm going to call it 8ball. And I'm going to publish my project. And what that will do is it will give me a bit of code to copy. Just press, or actually a URL to copy. So just copy that. And what it actually does is it enables you to share with your friends what you've done and learn from each other. And you can put that in an email or a WhatsApp or wherever it is. And you can see what other people have been getting up to. And you can use everything that's there. But it also helps you to share your code with me so I can see what people have been doing. So what I'm going to say is by the end of today, the competition isn't about today, but by the end of today, I've put it into the link in the description today. There is a link to go to this form. And if you could put your first name in, just your first name, because I'll give you a shout out tomorrow's session or during the week, and then paste in that code there. So you just put Bob or Jane or whatever you want. Just put your first name. You can even just have a random name if you don't want to actually give your first name, just so I can see who you are, and then just press submit, and then that will go into the box, and I can have a look to see what people are getting up to. And by the end of the week, I'm going to say, put in your best effort that shows off what you've been doing the most. Take what I've done, take it a little bit further and see what you can do. And then what I'll do is I'll at the very least, have a microbit shipped to you. I'll get your parents' email or something like that. We'll work out how it's possible to do that, or maybe I'll just ship it to the school and you can collect it at some point, or just, we'll work it out. So we got that. I'd see if I can grab somebody to chip in, and maybe we'll get an inventor kit instead and really up that game, and maybe we'll do a weekly prize for this. This week will be about gaming, next week will be a bit more about robotics as well. So we're going to try and up our game through all of that. So remind you, to do that, you just go to your make code and you click wherever you are in your make code. And here was a bit of code I was playing with earlier for a dice, picking a random between 1 and 2 and then having a 1 or else. And you just click that share button, give it a name, publish it, go to the form, and do put an enter in. Makes me happy to see that people are actually using these skills. Quite interested to see what people are getting up to. And by the end of the week, people that have been pushing in the most stuff will go forward into kind of prize draw for a microbit. So hopefully you found that interesting. We'll continue with the gaming tomorrow. Please feel free to share this link for the YouTube onto anyone else. It will record and you can watch it back over time. Also in the comments, if you could you tell me if the streaming quality was good? I know that it was a little bit pixelated when I was recording yesterday, but when it published live after the event, it was much clearer. So just do make a comment on the quality of the stream, and I'll try and see if I can improve that somehow. This is the first time I've done live streaming with YouTube, and I just want any feedback would be useful to improve it. So thank you very much, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow or any other point this week or next week. And again, share that link, and see you then. Make sure you put your entries in. Bye for now.